The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The Radical. Fundamental principles. The Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Hold on one second. Gotta turn on those lights. All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday night. It's already 8 p.m. here in Puerto Rico. Soon, you guys are gonna switch the clocks back, so I'll be back on East Coast time, but for now, I'm still an hour ahead of East Coast time. So, I hope everybody's having a great weekend. Lots to talk about today. We're back to talk a little bit about politics, a little bit about economics, a little bit about, maybe we'll talk a little bit about vaccines. We'll talk about, what else did I have? Foreign policy. Might talk about the Middle East. Yeah, Middle East. But what should we start with? Good news? Bad news? Who knows news? Hard to tell. All right, we're going to start with CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee annual conference that is held typically in Washington, D.C., but this year is held in Florida, I think the only state, or one of the few states that will allow, the only populous state that will allow large gatherings of people. So that's where I had my debates, was it now, a week ago? Video's not out yet, so as soon as the video's out, I will let you know about the video of the debate with John Mackey. But that was Florida. Florida's the only state where you can really hold these kind of live events, so that's where CPAC is this year. CPAC is kind of the leading conservative convention that is held, every year. I attended CPAC. Man, I can't even remember when, but it was a long time ago. I think it was sometime during the Obama administration. I attended a CPAC. The Ayn Rand Institute had a booth at CPAC. We tried to get me an invitation to speak at CPAC. They wouldn't let me speak at CPAC. Too much. But I was very friendly crowd, very positive. When they saw Ayn Rand's name, people were very excited, and met a lot of people. Generally, very positive towards me, towards Ayn Rand, towards the Ayn Rand Institute. So generally, a very positive experience at CPAC. Somebody says I interviewed John Bolton at CPAC. I did? Wow, I can't remember that. But then I am famous for having no memory, just no memory. But I interviewed John Bolton. I was interviewed by a few people. Yeah, maybe I interviewed John Bolton for a short segment. I was going to get to John Bolton in a minute, but that is interesting. Anyway, CPAC in those days was incredibly friendly to Ayn Rand, to me, to the Institute. Imagine if I went today. I'd probably be lynched. I'd certainly be canceled. I guess not technically canceled, but I would certainly be kicked out. I would be, they would not be happy to see me. At CPAC. Somebody says, how cool to forget he interviewed John Bolton. Yeah, it is pretty funny. I've met John Bolton on several occasions, so I know John Bolton fairly well. I mean, I don't know him well. I've met him several times. But it would be, CPAC would not be a very welcome place for me today. So, but CPAC is interesting. It's interesting in terms of kind of the positioning of the Republican Party. The battle lines are clearly drawn now. Who is and isn't invited to CPAC is kind of where the battle lines are. It's interesting because the battle lines are not conservative. The battle lines are more around pro-Trump, anti-Trump, or pro-Trump, not so pro-Trump, not completely pro-Trump. It's the line is basically how religious argue about Trump. That is what CPAC has drawn the line. It used to be about whether you were conservative or not. Certainly many Republicans were never invited to CPAC because they just weren't conservative. It was typically a place where the most conservative of the senators, of House members, of intellectuals, of radio talk show hosts were invited. But this year, this year it's clear. This year it's clear that the criteria by which the speakers were determined was their loyalty to Donald Trump. So conservatives, real conservatives, actual conservatives who hold conservatives' points of view, who vote conservative, like Ben Sasse, or like Nikki Haley, or like John Bolton, were not invited. All of them spoken at CPAC many times, but this year clearly not invited, despite the fact that many in the Republican Party consider Nikki Haley one of the frontrunners for the primaries, at least for president in 2024. Some even consider Ben Sasse to be such. Ben Sasse has been a very popular senator, except for the last couple of years with Trump. But it's very interesting how the line is being drawn. Who has been invited? Well, Ted Cruz and Senator Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley, who I've been talking about for at least a year, maybe two. We'll get to Hawley in a minute. Of course, a lot of the intellectuals who have supported Trump nonstop, a lot of the House members that have supported Donald Trump nonstop, including pretty far right in the collectivist sense members. One of those House members spoke earlier in the day at Nick Fuentes' gathering, and then came over to CPAC following Nick Fuentes' racist gathering, also in Florida, in Orlando. So yes, the battle lines are drawn across the kind of collectivist, populist line. No more is it about conservatism or what used to be considered conservative ideas. Which brings me to, Josh Hawley. You remember Josh Hawley? I've talked about him a lot. National conservative, senator, one of the senators who questioned who wanted an investigation into the election fraud. One of the senators who were trying to hold up certification of the vote during the Senate, and one of the senator who famously raised a fist to the demonstrators outside Capitol Hill on January 6th. But more importantly, I think one of the smartest senators in terms of just credentials, Ivy League education, considered very, very smart, and a leader of the national conservative kind of movement. And I just want to show you a 30-second clip of his talk at CPAC. I think it was earlier today, just to give you a sense of what the Republican Party of tomorrow, the Republican Party of today, the Republican Party of Donald Trump is all about. So we're going to play this 30-second segment. I'll try to run the whole 30 seconds without interrupting Senator Josh Hawley. Let it just play out and see what you think. This guy to me, we'll see if there's a real negative outcome out of January 6th. But this guy to me is the most dangerous political force in America today. He's young, he's charismatic, he's energetic. As I said, he's smart, he's well-educated, he knows what he's doing, and his ideas are about as evil as it gets on the right. So here goes Josh Hawley at CPAC. Oh, let me put my headphones so I can listen to this too.
By these modern-day oligarchs. What we need is a new nationalism, a new agenda to make the rule of the people real in this country and give the people America back. Give it back to them. Give it back to you. No more ruled by oligarchs, ruled by the people. That's what we've got to do. And I can tell you how I would start. I would start by breaking up the big tech corporations. Just break them up. Break them up in the name of the rule of the people. By these modern day oligarchs. What we need is a new nationalism, a new...
Once is enough. So, Josh Hawley calling for a new nationalism. Whoops, let me move on from, you don't have to see his picture. There's no reason for that. I don't need the headphones. Josh Hawley calling for a new nationalism. A nationalism where the state, in the name of the people, breaks up businesses. That could have been a line straight out of whom? Straight out of any Democrat. Straight out of AOC. Straight out of anybody on the radical left, on the far left. And rule of the people. Well, isn't that what we got? Isn't that what we call voting? Wasn't Joe Biden elected by the people? Don't we have now a president elected by the people? Isn't that how the American system works? Don't we have a Congress of the people? And break them up in the name of the people. Notice, not in the name of individual rights, the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, the Declaration. Oh no, none of that is relevant to the modern Republican Party. None of that is relevant to Donald Trump's political party. None of that is relevant to Josh Hawley. I think one of the premier leaders of at least this wing of the Republican Party moving into the future. Now, it's about breaking them up because that's what the people, not all the people that matter, want. This is what populism is exactly, the rule of the people. I mean, maybe we should introduce Ross Perot's idea of you get a little button that you can link up to the internet. In those days, you would link it up to the TV, to cable, and you get to vote on everything. To hell with the House of Representatives and the Senate. Let's have direct democracy. Let's have rule by the people. Which is what Ross Perot wanted with the little button by the television. Cook says, Teddy Roosevelt also campaigned on a new nationalism and popularized antitrust. Absolutely. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt used to make my top 5 worst presidents of all time. Probably still does. I haven't reconsidered my worst 5 presidents of all time because I don't know how to squeeze Obama and Trump into that and still get all the really bad guys in there. But Teddy Roosevelt definitely makes it because Teddy Roosevelt is the beginning of the end. He is the first progressive president of the United States. He is the one who introduces nationalism. He is the one that introduces conservationism, environmentalism, if you will. He is the one who really becomes a strong advocate of antitrust. And he is one who advocated for war. He was one, a big one in terms of military adventures. Military adventures. Oh, you guys want the top 5, the bottom 5? It's hard to figure out exactly, right? Because again, there's so many of them now. There's so many bad ones. But certainly Teddy would be in there. Wilson would have to be in there. And FDR would have to be there, though FDR was a good wartime president. That is, he was a terrible peacetime president and a decent wartime president. But certainly for his, you know, and and it's hard not to include Hoover, because Hoover's really the one who led us into the Great Depression, and in that sense is a horrific president. So Hoover would have to be there. Stephanie says Nixon and Johnson. Yeah, I mean, Johnson gave us the welfare state and gave us Medicare and Medicaid. Hard to beat that. And of course, Nixon gave us every environmental regulation we have in the books, including all the regulatory agencies like the EPA responsible for enforcing the environmental regulations. And then you've got Obama with Obamacare. You've got Bush with the ridiculous wars in the Middle East, and then with the financial crisis trying to save capitalism by violating its principles. And you've got Trump, who just brings down the essence of the presidency. So I don't know what you do with that, right? So that is what? Trump, Obama, Bush, Nixon, Johnson. That's 5 just in the last 50 years. And then you've got, or 60 years. And then you've got Roosevelt, Wilson, and Teddy. That's 8. Those are my 8 worst presidents. And notice the 3 of them are the last 3 presidents. We'll see how Biden does, right? How Biden does. All right, so let's see. So CPAC is going to be interesting. So CPAC is drawing the line between the, if you will, the new nationalists, the kind of a America first, in the Trump sense of the word, conservatives who want to manage the economy, who want to manage trade, who are vehemently anti-immigration, Republicans who are dedicated to Trump as an individual. Notice that Trump will be giving the final speech at CPAC. There was also a big sculpture. Did you see the big statue at CPAC? A big statue of Donald Trump in gold, wearing boxer shorts with American flag on them. You know, this talk about the worship of the man versus everybody else. You can see the statue. It's on YouTube. You can see the videos of the statue being wheeled through the convention center at CPAC, and everybody wanting a picture of the golden Trump. So, you know, this part of the Republican Party is firmly in Trump's grasp. He dominates this part of the Republican Party. Now, note that they forget, and they don't mention the fact that during Trump's presidency, put aside the fact that he lost the White House, of course, they're questioning that election, but that the Republicans lost the House of Representatives in 2018. I don't think they questioned that election. They lost the Senate, and they lost the White House. And yet, notice his grasp on the party. It doesn't matter that he's a loser that's brought about massive losses to the Republican Party. That doesn't matter. He's got this grip on them, which is an emotional grip. And I think the source of that grip is fundamentally his message. It's his hatred of the left, and hatred of the left, at least in speech. You know, he's quite friendly with them, I think, in person. But hatred of the left in speech is his willingness to fight them verbally in whatever ugly manner it chooses. It's anti-trade, anti-immigration, big government spending, populism that makes him attractive to this crowd. And it's his non-ideological, it's his pragmatism. It's his anti-intellectualism, his anti-ideology views that make him attractive to this audience. Now, Josh Hawley is an ideologue, And at the end, ideology always wins. In the end, ideas and ideals always win. And what Trump is setting the stage for is for the takeover of the Republican Party by the Josh Hawleys of the world. Notice, like a foreign policy hawk, a real American first foreign policy hawk like John Bolton is not there. A real fiscal conservative who truly believes in reducing government spending like Ben Sass is not there. A conservative who still attempts to defend capitalism. She doesn't do it very well, but still attempts to defend capitalism. Nikki Haley is not there. Because it's no longer about capitalism, about free markets, or about a proper American foreign policy in America, true America first foreign policy. It's about Trump, and it's nothing else. What's interesting is going to be, can this other side of the Republican Party, the Republican Party that is not represented at CPAC, can they mount a challenge to Trump? Do they have enough backing? Do they have enough support? Can they evoke enough enthusiasm out there to present an alternative to what is going on right now at CPAC? And that is hard to tell, but that is the war that we're going to be living through for the next, I'd say 4 years, but it's probably next decade or two within the Republican Party. And it is going to be a war. And who wins it will to a large extent determine, I think, the ultimate fate of this country. The fate of this country will now be determined by the Democrats unless the Republicans are completely impotent and leave all of the politics to the left, because the country's not on the left. So it's going to be interesting. It's interesting to watch, sickening to watch, disgusting to watch, but important. Important because it shapes the future. America needs an opposition party to the left. America needs a party that at least nominally stands for individual rights and free markets. Nominally, not in the sense that we mean it. A party that still longs for the Founding Fathers. That is the battle. Nicholas says the GOP is lost. Nobody will stand up against Trump. We'll see. If that is true, then the GOP indeed is lost, and they might lose many, many, many serial elections into the future unless Biden completely implodes. And Biden, I think, is going to get lucky, and he's not going to implode. But we're going to see exactly what happens. All right, a great job on the Super Chat so far, guys. Thank you. So we've got quite a bit of action. Don't forget, if you ask a question of $20 or more, you get priority. Your question will be answered first. You get to support the show. So bring it on. Those of you in the past have given hundreds of dollars on the Super Chat. Keep it coming. Let's finish February with a bang. Tomorrow's show will be dedicated to another Q&A. We'll have our $25 and up supporters on Zoom. And, of course, we'll have the Super Chat open for all of you guys, and we'll be doing an active Super Chat. That'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. There will be a open Q&A for everybody, so please join us then. Of course, don't forget to like the show before you leave, or like it now so that you don't forget. We should be over 100 likes right now, so you guys got a little bit of work to do. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe. If you're not yet a subscriber, love to have you as a regular on the show. You'll find out, and YouTube will let you know when the show goes live. All right, we've got our first dislike. All right, need some of those. Always get some of those as well. All right, let's see. So a few comments on the stimulus. Somebody wanted good news. Somebody wanted a positive show. Can we get a purely positive, hopeful show where Trump or Republicans, Democrats is not mentioned, or any of the other bad things in the near future? For your information, 12/12 on Sunday here in England. Yeah, absolutely. There'll be a show on Atlas Shrugged next week We'll do a purely positive show on Atlas Shrugged. I will really try not to mention Trump, Republicans, Democrats. The problem is, and I told you guys this before, that those shows don't do as well. When I do a positive show, things are, all about positive values, about good stuff. Viewership is down, Superchat is down, So the best way to get me to do a positive show is to sponsor one. And you can sponsor one by, with a $1,000 contribution, you can sponsor a show. And it can be your theme. So if you want an all-positive show, if you want an all-positive show in a particular, with a particular spin, with a particular, particular theme, a particular topic, then you saw Troy did 8 of them on the virtues, and he also did the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, which we're going to do next week. We've done the Fountainhead. But you can sponsor such a show, and that would be great. That's another way to support the show, is to sponsor a topic, any kind of topic, within reason, that I can talk about. I will be happy to oblige. Now, I do know I owe, and I can't remember whom, but somebody gave me $500 to do a movie recommendation. I do remember that. I have not forgotten. Don't worry. I will do a show on the movie, or not a whole show on the movie, but I will do a movie review of the movie you suggested next week. I've got it lined up to watch. I've seen it years ago, but I'll see it again so I can do a proper review. LMF writes, your show with Lex caused me to read Ayn Rand. That's what it's all about. Thank you. That is fantastic. And I'm now an objectivist. Thanks. Have you read David Deutsch's books? Like Rand's, they are radically pro-human, pro-reason. Years ago, his books turned me away from leftism. That's great. I plan on reading David Deutsch. He's on my reading list. I've seen him tweet. I have a feeling we have some deep disagreements about epistemology and maybe some other things, but I'm looking forward to reading him in order to get a better handle on what it is that we agree on, what it is we disagree on, what are the issues. I'm looking forward to engaging with that material. Not sure exactly when I'll be able to get to that, but certainly in the next few months, I will be reading David Deutsch. So, thank you, LMF. Thanks for the support. All right, let's. I want to talk a little bit about the stimulus. Not too much. Just the stimulus package, $1.9 trillion, has passed the House of Representatives. $1.9 trillion, which includes a $1,400 check to most of you, and maybe I'll get one. Who knows? It also includes a huge amount of money. There's help for small businesses through the payroll protection program. There's a massive amount of money that goes to state and local governments. There's a massive amount of money that just goes to a variety of different projects and different programs that have nothing to do with COVID. I mean, this is all billed as a stimulus plan, but there's nothing stimulating about it other than handing people cash. Most of it is just throwing money away. Most of it is just growing government spending, growing government power, and printing a lot of money. A lot of pork. A lot of pork. And there's going to be more as Biden works his way through his agenda. This is going to be a pork-filled legislative Congress. Now, beyond that, the House stimulus package included an increase of $15 an hour to the minimum wage, all that would slowly increase and kick in 2025. I've talked a lot about the minimum wage, and I'm going to talk about it again. I mean, it's an awful idea, really, really bad, in particular for those that it pretends to help, that it is, lies to us about helping. But the thing about the bill is that the Senate will not vote for raising a minimum wage. The Senate has ruled already that it cannot vote as part of the package. So it would have to have a separate vote on the minimum wage to get that passed. They would have to have 60 votes. They don't have 60 votes. It's likely that they don't even have 50 votes, because at least 2 Democrats have said that they do not support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. The progressive part, the progressive part of the Democratic Party are flipping out. They're going nuts because they think that this is, an integral part of the agenda of the left, and it has to pass, and yet many Democrats oppose it. So it's just not going to happen, the $15 minimum wage. Of course, Republicans, as always, are coming to the rescue. So Mitt Romney is proposing a $10 minimum wage, and Josh Hawley is proposing, instead of a minimum wage, some income supplementation. So there's now a call among Democrats to unite with Romney and potentially with Josh Hawley to pass some kind of bill to raise wages of employees. Anyway, a total disaster. Instead of the Republicans holding the line, opposing raising the minimum wage unequivocally, and they would win that battle, they're already starting to negotiate and starting to compromise. So who knows? They might have a filibuster-proof 60 votes to raise the minimum wage, just maybe not to 15, maybe to a lower number. But there's a good chance it will be raised. So thank you, Republicans, for being such a great opposition party. I did want to say a few, positive things about the state of the world right now before I talk about the Middle East, maybe. Let me just say a few positive things, because I've been reading a bunch of this stuff and it's really good. The vaccines work. The data's in. The data's overwhelmingly positive. Particularly the data about Pfizer coming out of Israel is amazingly positive. The Pfizer vaccine works. It protects 95% of people from the virus. People who get vaccinated are incredibly unlikely to get COVID, even if they're exposed to it. They're very unlikely to give COVID to other people. If you vaccinate enough of the population, at least for the life of the vaccine, however long it stays effective, this is done. It's killed. It's over. Add to the number of people being vaccinated daily now, the number of people who've already had COVID, and we are very, very fast approaching the point in which COVID should be irrelevant in the world out there. We should be able to open our economy completely. We should be able to open travel. We should be able to completely free up the economy, or at least free it up to at least as much as it was free before COVID hit. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is finally, oh my God, being approved by the FDA. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a one-shot vaccine. You don't need 2. It's a traditional vaccine. It's not an mRNA vaccine. So a lot of people who are kind of fearful of modern technology, maybe fearful of a new product, are more likely to be willing to take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and not rather than the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. The fact the children are not safe. Why are the children not safe? The children are fine. Children were always safe. That's the funny thing about the COVID, right? So the vaccines they're working. As it is already, the number of cases, the amount of hospitalization, and the number of deaths have plummeted in the United States, have come down dramatically. They're coming down in Israel. Europe is still a mess, but Europe hasn't really started vaccinating. You've also got the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine coming out of Europe, which is quite effective. AstraZeneca has also said that they can easily produce a booster for the vaccine that would cover you for the South African, more deadly version of the virus. Moderna and Pfizer have said that they can adapt the mRNA vaccine to deal with whatever mutation happens in the future. Generally, if we can get these vaccines done, if people can get vaccinated, then life can go back to normal, complete normalcy. Now, politicians are going to take their time opening up, unless you're in Florida, which is pretty much open already. But even California, Gavin Newsom is being recalled. Good for Californians for recalling Gavin Newsom. An awful governor, a hypocrite, and who's managed COVID terribly. California is one of the worst hit, and yet it has the worst lockdowns in the country. Even though where I lived in Orange County, everybody was ignoring the lockdowns. Restaurants were open in spite of the lockdowns. A lot of parts of California just ignored the governor completely. But anyway, California is opening up now. California is opening up because of the stress, because of the pressure on Newsom. Newsom has no choice now but to start opening up dramatically. Otherwise, he's definitely going to lose the recall vote. So I think other Democratic governors, other governors around the country are going to put in similar pressure to open up. Otherwise, they're not going to be voted for. I think people are fed up. They've had enough. I think even people who took the COVID very seriously and overly seriously maybe, people who are scared once they get vaccinated are going to expect and ultimately demand to go back to life as normal. I mean, that the pandemic is to a large extent over, and with the vaccines rolling out, it will become evident in the next couple of months that it is indeed over. It's done. Now, once the epidemic is over, once businesses start opening up, what you're going to see is the American entrepreneur spirit kicking in. You're going to see, and you're already seeing, surprisingly, 2020 was a record year in terms of total new business applications. So a lot of small businesses started in 2020 to replace the businesses that went under. 2021 is off to a similar start. We're going to see the American entrepreneur spirit kick in. You're going to see economic activity. As people start leaving their homes, they're going to go back to work, i.e. back to productive activity. They've also been accumulating cash in their bank accounts, and that cash in their bank accounts is going to go out, and they're going to start consuming, which is going to create a environment that producers are going to want to produce into. So we're going to see economic activity in spite of all the damage that COVID has done, the damage the government has done, everything. You're going to start seeing economic activity. One of the downsides of that, if you will, is you're going to see inflation pick up a little bit. The bond market is already signaling that. 10-year bonds were one-year highs yesterday, because of inflation expectations, because the bond market is basically signaling the pandemic is over, economic life is going back. All this money you've printed, all this money you've sent out there is going to have an impact on demand, which is going to drive prices up. We'll see if that happens, but that seems to be early indications from the financial markets. Financial markets, we'll see. We'll see how good they are. Hard to tell. But there is it seems like real economic indicators are suggesting economic activity coming out of this. Now, is it sustained? I doubt it. Is the damage, is it going to be easy to overcome the damage done? I doubt it. So I see a spurt of growth and then a decline and stagnation into the distant future, right? So we're still going to have a long, slow, very, very kind of sluggish economic growth longer term. But in the short run, things are definitely looking up. A lot of the stimulus packages that were passed last year, this is one of the funny things about the 1.9 trillion. I mean, the 1.9 trillion is virtue signaling or economic signaling. It's Biden saying, see, I did something for you. But the fact is that most of the money from the previous stimulus packages, trillions of dollars, have not gone out yet, have not been spent yet. So we're loading $1.9 trillion. By the time they're spent, the pandemic's going to be over. The pandemic's going to be over, at least, and the economy is going to be, to some extent, back. But they're going to pump huge quantities of money. House prices are high, but house prices will be high throughout the pandemic. at least in certain areas, but it looked like now house prices on average are going up. But there is generally in the country a shortage of housing. So it's hard to tell with house prices whether it's rational or not, given that there is demand for housing, there is a shortage of housing in certain areas in the United States. And my guess is that during COVID, housing starts slowed. That is, housing starts slowed. So now there's going to be a lot of building going on. Again, a positive short-run economic sign when there's a lot of housing being built, because that's productive economic activity. Okay, so yes, I see a lot of positives out there on the horizon with a jolt of real inflation, which will then require the Fed to do something about it, which will spiral us downwards and ultimately land us in a long-term, the kind of long-term stagnation I've been talking about for a long, long time. All right. All right, finally, I want to talk quickly about the Middle East, about Biden's moves in the Middle East over the last week. The United States bombed Iranian positions in Syria. I'm sure that all the supporters of Trump who were excited when Trump attacked the Iranians were excited by Biden attacking the Iranians. I'm sure that follows, right? That it's the action that's being celebrated, not the person, but who knows? We also saw that the intelligence report coming out of the CIA this week that says that unequivocally the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was the one who authorized the killing of the Saudi dissident in Turkey. This was a big so-called human rights issue, and which Trump didn't do anything about. It's going to be interesting to see what Biden does. He was very critical of Trump not doing anything about it. And Biden finally called the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and had a discussion with him. So, and of course, Biden is trying to encourage Iran to rejoin to recommit to the Obama-era Iranian deal, which was a terrible deal. And part of the bombing of Iranian targets in Syria was trying to egg them to do that. Whether it works or not is interesting. So anyway, what to make of all this? I mean, Biden in foreign policy is basically a traditional Obama Democrat. He's not going to do anything radical or principled or particularly strong. He wants Iran back into the nuclear deal because why is Iran still a threat? I mean, here's the thing, and I apologize for bringing up Trump again, but it's unavoidable if you're going to talk about politics and foreign policy. If you're not going to have Iran in the deal, remember the whole issue with Iran is the developing nuclear weapons. So we want to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons. There's only one way to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, in my view, right? And that is to destroy their capacity to do so, either by replacing the regime or by destroying their capacity to do so. That is, by bombing every single facility that might present the potential of creating nuclear material into oblivion, right? And doing that to every single facility in the country and redoing it every time they rebuild it and attempt to redo it, right? That's the only way to stop them. The Obama administration pretended like and was under the illusion that they could cut a deal with the Iranians, but it was a funny deal, a deal that after 10 years when it expired would actually, in a sense, permit the Iranians to develop nuclear weapons. So it was an awful deal, and it wasn't a particularly verifiable deal. It wasn't a deal that you could go in and verify. Trump, on the other hand, believed that if he just, I don't know, pounded his fist on the desk, put sanctions on the Iranians, kill one of their generals, that would stop the Iranians from developing nuclear weapons. So he believed something that was just as fictitious, just as delusional, just as absurd and ridiculous as Obama. Now comes in Biden, who's seen that Trump's, by the way, the Iranians are actively developing nuclear weapons right now, based on all intelligence reports, because they're not part of this deal, so they don't have to play any games. Now, their economy's in tatters, and they suffered dramatically under COVID, but religious fanatics don't care about suffering. So now comes Biden, who also wants to stop them from developing nuclear weapons. He believes in the Obama method, but he can't just eliminate the sanctions that Bush imposed. He has to get the Iranians to agree to join. I mean, it's complicated, right? He's got all these moving pieces. In the meantime, the Iranians are clearly attacking U.S. positions in Iraq and in Syria. Why we're still there, I don't know, because I remember that Trump promised us over and over and over and over and over again to bring the troops home. So why are the troops still in Syria and in Iraq? But they are being attacked by Iranians. Other than killing the one general, Trump did nothing about it. Zero, zilch, in the name of America First and in the name of Make America Great Again. He did not protect our troops any better than Obama did or than Bush did. So now Biden has that situation. Anyway, it's a mess. It's a mess. So now the Iranians are still attacking our troops. Biden has to show that he's somewhat tough. So he's attacked some Iranian targets in Syria because he doesn't want to do it in Iraq because the Iraqi government would be pissed off at America if we attacked them in Iraq. And he wants to be nice with the Iraqi government. So he did it in Syria, whose government we don't care about anyway. And I'm sure he got permission from Putin to do it because the Russians control the airspace in Syria. And as far as I know, none of the Russian batteries launched ground-to-air missiles against the U.S. aircraft. So the whole thing is a frigging mess. It's a joke. But it's all these games that politicians play with big weapons and huge amount of power. Huge amount of power. At our expense. With our money. With our lives. All in the name of making America safe when it's not making America safe. It has nothing to do with making America safe. It has nothing to do with America first. It has nothing to do with making America safe. It has nothing to do with any of that. Now remember too that Trump danced with the Saudi Arabian sheiks, was unbelievably friendly to Saudi Arabia, and when this Washington Post commentator was murdered, Saudi commentator was murdered by the Saudis, did nothing, did not condemn the Saudi government, did not really go after the Saudi government, did not have any sanctions on the Saudi government, nothing. Democrats condemned him. Now Biden is in there. What's he going to do? Nothing. He's going to dance with the sheiks. Yes, we withdrew our support for the Saudi attacks in Yemen. Who cares? He's going to dance with the sheiks. Because the fact is the foreign policy of Trump and the foreign policy of Obama, Biden is not that different. Maybe with the exception of Russia. Maybe. Yeah, Biden called Putin before the attacks on Syria because he didn't want the Russians who control the air defense systems in Syria to launch against American airplanes. That would not have been good. So he called him, and he got it just like Trump did. Trump would have done the same thing. You call Putin and you say, hey. So foreign policy is the same. No difference. No principles. No America first. No American interests. No perspective on what American interests are. no perspective. All right, so a little bit on the Middle East. I could do hours in the Middle East if you wanted me to. Of course, if you want me to do a show on any topic you want, you can sponsor a show for $1,000. You can do that by writing to me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. You can do a sponsorship through there. You can do a movie review for $500, or you can just send in questions, comments, suggestions, insults, whatever you want. I shouldn't do that because then my email is going to be flooded with you guys, with stuff from you guys. All right, of course, if you really care about the show, the way to promote the show is to promote it. You are my promoters. You're my marketing team. There is no other way to get these ideas out there unless you are willing to share this with people who follow you, even if it's small numbers of people. So use Twitter, use Facebook, use email, use LinkedIn, use whatever medium you have to share. And I know the long shows that I go on and on and on, probably not worth sharing, not to a beginner audience, but maybe some of the short videos that Action Jackson produces for us. Those are perfect for sharing. You watch one, you like one, click the share button, share it to some of your social media. In the meantime, before you leave, or maybe you should do it right now before you forget, don't forget to like the program. Don't forget to share this program if you've got the kind of audience that this might appeal to. And again, I'm always looking for topics to talk about. Feel free to suggest some. Send me videos you want me to comment on. I know I don't always do the comment on the videos you guys sent me, but sometimes I do. And it really does help, right? It does help that you make suggestions. It helps shape the future of the shows. So keep those suggestions coming, and certainly increase those. And of course, if you make those suggestions through Superchat, and if you put some dollars associated with it, they get more attention. All right. You can also do that, by the way. You can ask a question when you make a contribution on PayPal, and that's equivalent to Superchat. If you're not listening live and you want to ask me questions, you can go to PayPal. You're on, Yaron Brooks Show in PayPal, paypal.me/Yaron Brooks Show, and you can make a contribution there, and you can ask a question through that, and I will answer that question in the Super Chat. And I've got a few questions from somebody who sent me on PayPal that way, so feel free to do that. All right, some Super Chat questions that came in. We'll start with the one that had the most dollars associated with it. I think it's this one. I can't check. Okay, I think it's this one. Why do you think so few people care about consistency and getting to what's really true? We've gotten to the point where most people can reach a life expectancy of 80 or more through just drifting and not taking truth or ideas seriously. I mean, that is a great question, and really the core of everything, because if people are not interested in thinking, if people are not truth seekers, if people are not looking for consistency, for truth, for values, for knowledge, then it really is hopeless. It really is a massive challenge. And why don't they? Well, some of that is because we live in a culture in which we're told, well, there is no truth. That is your truth and my truth, somebody else's truth. There is no objective knowledge. I mean, we're at a point where academics at universities, people who teach our kids, are telling us that 2 plus 2 might not be 4. Actually, isn't 4. Actually, if you think 2 plus 2 equals 4, you're a racist, because that's white math. That's insane. I think people who are seeking truth are often accused of being simplistic, often accused of not being sophisticated, of not being part of the elite. And are intimidated into not thinking. I think this is what happens with a lot of smart kids in school who are ridiculed for being smart, who are ridiculed for being good students. and unfortunately lose the motivation to do it. So it goes back to the fundamental choice that we have as human beings. The fundamental choice, the choice that is related to free will, because this is the fundamental sense in which we have free will. We choose to think or not to think, to focus on reality or not to focus on reality, to pursue truth or not to pursue truth. That's the fundamental. That's what it's about. And some people never choose it. Some people choose to pursue it and then are discouraged. Some people choose to pursue it and then are confused by the nonsense that passes for education and culture and learning today. So over and over and over again, we get this disincentive to pursue the truth. So one of the things that incumbent on us as objectivists, as advocates for the truth, as advocates for objective knowledge, as advocates for knowledge, and is to make it clear why it's worthwhile living to be 80 in focus, living to be 80 pursuing values, living to be 80 pursuing the truth. So one of the things that we must do is not just fight for the truth, but fight for the idea that truth is efficacious. That thinking leads to happiness. Thinking leads to success. Reason is a cardinal value. And that leads to success in life. I mean, I say this often, but it's always worth repeating. To 80-year-olds, it's only one life. You only live once. And the only way to live it true, the only way to live it proper, the only way to live it well, the only way to live it happily is to use your mind. There is nothing else. There is nothing else. To just fight the left, it gets you nowhere, because what are you fighting for? So we have got to find ways to convince people, that using their mind is good for them, is the ultimate good for them. It's the ultimate value for them. And for them to be successful at living, that's what they need to do. There is nothing else. Politics is way downstream from these kind of ideas. These are the ideas that change a culture. These are the ideas that matter. Politics is what results from the ideas that exist in a culture, the ideas that dominate a culture, the ideas that shape a culture. Our job is to shape the culture through ideas. Let's get those ideas out there and show people the benefit, the value of thinking. That's basically our mission. Results are not measured in politics. See, this is the problem. You're too dominated by collectivism. Results are not measured by politics. Results are measured by individual happiness. Results are measured by your achievement of values. Results are measured by what you do with your life. Not by what our politicians do. I am not here primarily to change the politics. I don't measure my success by changing the politics. That would be absurd and bizarre. The politics are changing for the worst, much worse. The point of objectivism is not to change the political system. The point of objectivism is to change your life. The point of objectivism is for you to be able to achieve happiness. And if we get enough people focusing on their own happiness, focusing on their own life, focusing on their own achievement, focusing on success in their life, then the politics will take care of themselves. So our battle is a cultural battle. Our battle is to be in the culture and to affect the culture by being good artists, by being good businessmen, by being good teachers, educators, by being good intellectuals. Our job is to be in the culture and shape it by being good people, by being advocates of good ideas. So go out there and do your work. If you want to change the world, it's up to you, because you're where the culture is. And you can impact the culture around you. And if you have thousands of people doing that, change happens. Change happens. It's how every intellectual change actually happened. You get a philosopher, and then you got to get it into the culture by a variety of different means. All right. Rand settled on the term capitalism, even though normally she held a term using ism to mean standard of value plus ism. Separating state and economics isn't capital. I think something like freedomism is more accurate. See, but Ayn Rand really invented, created only one ism that I can think of, and that is objectivism. Egoism is not new. Altruism is not new. She better and more clearly and more articulately defined them. But she didn't change them. She didn't come up with a new term. She took most of the terminology, with the exception of naming her philosophy. She took most of the terminology from the world out there, and then clearly defined what was actually meant by the term being used. So she took egoism and properly defined it, consistent with what it actually represents. She took altruism and did the same thing. And there's a perfectly good term out there that represents the right thing: capitalism. Capitalism is a term designated to describe the kind of social, political, economic world that existed in the early, mid, late 19th century. It was popularized by Karl Marx, describing what was going on around him, particularly in England. And what does he mean? What was meant by capitalism? It meant property rights, freedom, and the government staying out of it. And what Ayn Rand does to the term capitalism is she gives it a philosophical definition. She clarifies what it actually means, what the principle is that guided the British economy in the 19th century, the American economy. What was the principle, even though it was never practiced consistently? What was it? It was a government whose sole responsibility was the protection of individual rights, primarily property rights, in which all property is privately owned. That is what Ayn Rand did to an existing term. She took a term that referred to something specific in reality that was already in the culture. She didn't coin a new term. Again, the only completely new term as an ism, I think, that she coined is objectivism. Why is this guy recreate our story on this chat? What is his purpose? To move you to somebody else's stream, YouTube channel? To, call an end to the Iran Brook show? How does he know what my profits are? Relative to whom? I suspect I make on the show more money than he does. Regrouping inevitable? Why? Where? And why be here? Just to be obnoxious and just to be just bizarre. The motivation that people have to do the things that they do. That's what I find really interesting. All right, so I don't see a need for freedomism. Freedomism is very much similar to libertarianism, which is a term even divorced from the libertarian movement. Ayn Rand didn't like. She didn't like freedomism. Part of the issue with freedom is it's a word that everybody likes. Everybody is for freedom, including the Marxists. Everybody likes freedom. So what is freedomism? You now have to you have to give an objective definition of the term freedom. Just like, so you're starting over again, and it doesn't add anything. I've been hearing leftists argue that generous unemployment benefits incentivize corporations to raise wages to attract low-skilled labor back to the workforce. Is there something to this? Maybe. But then, something else has to give. There's no free lunches, right? And they're not going to attract low-skilled labor at these higher wages because the low-skilled labor can't produce at the level of the new wages they're getting. So there may be, so it doesn't really make any sense. Nobody's going to pay you $15 an hour to do work that's worth $7 or to do work that's worth $10. But imagine if somehow that happened. The only way you could make the work that was worth 7 or 10 worth 15 now is by raising prices. So those same companies would have to raise prices because they were forced now to pay more. And if they raised prices, what would happen? Well, who consumes their goods? Typically, it's the people in the socioeconomic level that got their wages increased to 15, which would mean their standard of living would decline because the prices that they were paying would go up even though their wages went up. So it's not clear that they'd be better off. In addition, a lot of those wages would now be so high that it would be cheaper to bring machines in to do it. I've given the examples of McDonald's shifting to iPads where you plug in the order, not having somebody behind the counter to be rude to you. I think a lot of fast food restaurants are going to shift to that model as the cost of labor goes up because of minimum wage laws and things like that. The number of jobs is going to decline. The shift to robots, which is going to happen anyway, will accelerate. So, it's, sorry, getting these word issues. All right, let me copy this over. So, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. It's bad economics. It's bad economic policy, it's bad corporate policy, and it's bad for poor people. It's not something that improves the lives ultimately of poor people. And the economics are completely and utterly bogus. They assume that what determines wages is not the employee's productivity. What determines wages is the whim of the company. But again, if the employee can't produce at the $15 an hour, they're not going to employ him. They're going to find a robot that can do it. They can find something else that can do it, or they're going to shut down that line of business, or they're going to raise prices. They're going to raise prices. But a lot of businesses will go out of business, particularly those businesses that are borderline and that employ a lot of people, at these lower levels. Now we've got running commentary about distractions. All right, is the real reason there's a moratorium on evictions so the government can bankrupt landlords and begin nationalizing housing? No, I don't think so. I don't think government is that sophisticated. It's simple. It's altruism plus an attempt to buy votes, right? It's basically saying people can't afford to pay their mortgage. People are suffering. People are needy. People need help. We can't not help them. And if we do this, they're going to love us and they're going to vote for us. So it's absolutely not nationalizing. You won't see the nationalization of housing. But what you'll see is difficulty. You'll see more regulations. You'll see more controls. You'll see more maybe rent control. You'll see more subsidies. You'll see more government involvement. You'll see more people become dependent on government. And that might be a motivation to make people dependent on government. Right? That could be a real motivation. But no, I don't think we're going to see nationalization of the rental stock. All right, don't forget, you can ask questions to Super Chat. If you ask questions above $20, you will get priority, so use the Super Chat. And, of course, the more dollars you associate with the question, the sooner I will answer that question. Anything above $20 get answered immediately, unless I'm in the middle of a sentence. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see some $25+ questions. Any modern fiction authors that you love? Trying to find some great new reads. I'm reading a book right now. Let me find it. I'm not great at literature in terms of particularly knowledgeable about literature, so I'm not going to make any strong recommendations. I am reading a book by Neil Stephenson. It's a series of books. It's called The Baroque Cycle. And I'm enjoying it primarily. I mean, some of the characters are very enjoyable, but also I'm enjoying it because it deals with a period in history that I am very interested in, which is the birth of the Enlightenment, the period in the late 17th century into the early 18th century, the period of John Locke, of Leibniz, of Newton. And that's exactly what it deals with. And actually, a lot of the book is dealing with the conflicts between Newton and Leibniz. But while dealing with that, it covers a whole spectrum of issues relating to the politics, to the way people live, to finance. There's a whole discussion of the financial dealings in Amsterdam and in Lyon in France, which I find some of the most interesting, some of the most interesting discussions. So I'm enjoying Neil Stephenson's Baroque Cycle. It's like 8 books. I'm on like book 5, and I've really enjoyed it. It's got some swashbuckling pirates stuff. It's got philosophical stuff, scientific material. I don't know. The description of Newton is not the most positive, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it's fascinating. It's got this woman heroine in it, this woman who's just amazingly kick-ass. She's just fantastic in terms of, how good she is at what she does. And anyway, so I strongly recommend it. I recommend it. Don't strongly recommend it, but that's it. I don't read much modern fiction. Started Economics in One Lesson on your recommendation. Very good stuff. I've been focused on advocating the virtue of gaining the fullest context possible on topics like economics. This helps. P.S. Appreciate you. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yes, Economics in One Lesson. Please read it if you haven't. And the broken window fallacy, which actually is from Bastiat, is brilliant, and it repeats itself over and over and over and over again. In a sense, the whole stimulus package is an example of a broken window fallacy. The whole idea that the economy is going to be better after COVID is a broken window fallacy. The whole idea that wars are good for the economy is, and crises like COVID are ultimately good for the economy, are all broken window fallacies, as relevant when the book was written in 1947 as they are today. So encourage you to read Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. I think we're at like 280, I don't know, 290. Let's round it up to $290 on the super chat. It would be great if we could break 300. It would be great if we could get to $400 tonight. That would get February in a little better light, in a little better financial situation. So if there are any people out there who can help us get to 400, that'd be great. Remember, this is value for value. I assume that you're listening to this because you view the show as a value. One way to show that it is a value is to offer value in return. $5, $10, $100, $1,000, all are fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. That gets us just a little bit closer to $400. So you can link it to a question, and therefore I have to provide a value for the value I just received, which is your dollars. But of course, you can also just offer a value for the show itself at whatever level suits you and is appropriate for you. Essay on the assault from the ivory tower almost makes me cry as I see woke anti-white garbage happening now. Did you ever meet any professors like this? Did I ever meet any completely woke professors? I mean, I'm trying to think if I ever have. I mean, I think I have. I can't bring anybody to mind right now. I certainly have met people like that. I've never debated anybody quite that depraved. I mean, as I've said often, in many respects, the socialists are nowhere near as bad as this woke nonsense, which excludes any discussion because it labels anything that you say pretty much that is not consistent with woke culture as racist or bigoted or something like that. So you can't have a discussion, you can't have a debate with these people. At least the socialists, there's some issues that you can argue about, right? Daniel keeps adding to the pot. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. All right. Somebody asked, Junior, this is a question I got from let's see, not over email, from PayPal. During your GME shows, you had to keep reiterating that you were speaking as Yaron Brook of the Yaron Brook Show, not as a financial professional. That's right. Putting that alongside the SEC's investigation of Elon Musk for his market-moving tweets, have such regulations ever been challenged on First Amendment freedom of speech grounds? If so, what was the court's rationale for permitting the infringement on speech? If not, what do you think would be the prospects for such a case all the way to the Supreme Court, especially if it were to come from a well-known, outspoken, combative entrepreneur like Musk or Barstool Sports' Dave Portnoy, who was rumored to be under the eye of the SEC in the fall? I don't know of any cases where it has been taken to court on First Amendment rights. But the Supreme Court is very clear on the fact that the First Amendment does not apply, according to the Supreme Court, not according to me, to commercial speech, to what it calls commercial speech. It does not apply to business, to profit-seeking businesses. The First Amendment, according to the Supreme Court, primarily applies to political speech, but not to commercial speech. So it wouldn't apply to Elon Musk. It wouldn't apply to me talking about finance. The Supreme Court has upheld regulations, financial regulations, that clearly limit speech. For example, as a financial professional, I have to disclose to the government all of my financial contributions to politicians. I don't contribute to politicians, partially as a result. But I have to disclose to the government, even if the contributions are small, even if it's $20 to somebody's local campaign. Now, they claim it is in order to stop fraud, in order to stop me paying a politician so that he can allocate his pension fund money to me. And therefore, I have no free speech. I have no privacy rights as a private citizen, because the burden isn't on me to show that I did not commit fraud. But that's the level we're at in the United States. If you look at business regulations, if you look at what actually businessmen have to follow, primarily in the financial sector, but more broadly as well, it would stun many of you. The extent to which we are already a fascist country, to the extent that we are already under the thumb of government, to the extent that we are already beholden to our government and cannot act independently. And the courts are not going to protect us because the courts have been corrupted by a terrible interpretation of the Constitution by conservatives, the fact that liberals don't care about the Constitution, and the fact that both conservatives and liberals care about democracy. So we're not going to be saved by the courts, not in any fundamental way. At the margins, yes. Again, buying time, little things, certain changes. We can be saved by the courts. I mean, Daniel says, just look at what the Federal Reserve System does. I mean, you don't know half of what the Federal Reserve System does. I mean, the extent to which the Federal Reserve controls, regulates, manipulates daily the financial system is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Right. All right, we're now at almost $310. Somebody could just write a $100 check and we'd get a $400. It would be easy to be at $400. That would be pretty cool. $250 would be even cooler, but $100 would be great. All right, what was the role of Ayn Rand and objectivism in motivating or inspiring the self-help movement industry? Interesting question. I suspect, I can't prove it, right? They're quite significant. You remember in the 1980s was considered the me generation? The baby boomers going through the 80s. There was suddenly a focus on how do I achieve success financially, how do I achieve success at work, how do I achieve happiness. And a whole self-help industry came out of that, the late 70s, 80s, into the 90s. Some of that was Nathaniel Branden, who, because of Ayn Rand, he couldn't have done this independently, but because of Ayn Rand, really made the concept of self-esteem important. Now, it was later corrupted completely, partially by him, but partially by others who picked up on it. Thank you, anonymous user. Thank you, Brian. Was corrupted, but Nathaniel Branden, who then wrote a bunch of self-esteem books and wrote a lot of articles, but there were others who picked up on this. And if we have Gina Golan on the show again, we can ask her about the state of psychology. I think psychology got a lot better because of Ayn Rand, and because of the focus on self, and because of the focus on happiness, and because of the focus on success and health and cognition and the role of cognition in a healthy psychology, I think that again is an Ayn Rand thing. So I think all of those are already, right? Massive changes to the culture. The culture in that sense is much better today, right? Much better today than it was. And it's much better today because of Rand and bringing her ideas and influencing psychology and influencing self-help and influencing some of these issues. And, you know, Brandon, to the extent that he sustained some of Ayn Rand's ideas, he did in some realms, he didn't in others, was an important conduit of this. And you know, because he became prominent within his field and wrote a lot of books about self-esteem that related some of Ayn Rand's ideas and had a lot of people into therapy and really impacted them. But that's what we need. We need lots of people to be conduits. Lots of people to take these ideas and take them out there and impact and use and influence and bring it into their particular profession. And that's how you change your culture. You bring Ayn Rand's ideas into your profession. You use them in the application of the profession. And you do that in hundreds of different professions. And that's how you change a culture. Even to the point where people are now doing stuff, like a lot of the self-help guys, and talking about self-actualization or self-esteem or whatever, not even knowing that the origins of this was Ayn Rand. That they got it, not directly, but indirectly from Ayn Rand. What are your thoughts on the recent popularity of SPACs? Is this a case where the regulations closed down one road, so people flocked towards another? Is it tied into other trends in the market? Could it be inflating a bubble? And if so, would it be similar to other startup fuel bubbles? Yeah, I mean, I'm mixed about SPACs. On the other hand, it is a market solution to regulation, the whole regulation of the whole going public process, which has become so cumbersome and so, but also being a public company has become cumbersome. So SPACs are a way to circumvent that. And yes, it has become a bubble. It is helping a bubble. We're seeing some of that bubble maybe starting to burst. You saw that in the last few days with technology stocks going down, with Tesla going down, with some of the other tech stuff and the NASDAQ going down. We'll see if that continues and what exactly happens. But I'm skeptical. I mean, SPACs are a good idea. Some of the SPACs are brilliant. Some of the SPAC organizers are excellent, and they're going to do fantastic, and they're going to be wonderful. But when everybody's doing it, even when the ideas are not very good, but everybody feels like the way to make money is to start a SPAC, it's a bubble. It's overdone. Right? SPAC is an entity that really owns nothing. It just has money. It goes public. In a sense, it gets a ticker with and it sells shares with the idea that it will buy a company with the money it raises with the shares. So when you buy into a SPAC, when you're taking the stock of a SPAC, you're buying a black box because you don't know exactly what company they will buy. They're telling you the basic idea of what they're going to buy, but they're not telling you the exact nature of what they're going to buy, the exact company. So you're buying a black box, which is very dangerous, very dangerous. All right, I got a bunch of thumbs down, I guess because I talked about Trump early in the show, and that got me blacklisted. Somebody writes, listening to Kevin McCarthy's presser on Friday. Why? There's no difference between the left and right, except where and how much to spend. And remember, Kevin McCarthy is not just anybody on the right. Kevin McCarthy is part of the so-called Liberty group within the House of Representatives. He is supposedly one of the more what do you call it, conservative members of Congress. And he's a complete sellout. Complete sellout. Right? All right, Paul. Paul just hit a home run. Got us over the 400, well over the 400. Thank you. Daniel says, I'll trade $49.99 for one good Trump rant. Okay, remember that, Daniel, because one good Trump rant is coming. Not today, maybe, but it is coming. I've already done my Trump spiel at the beginning of the show. But there definitely will be a Trump rant, and I expect $49.99 at that point, and I'll call you on it, Daniel, if I remember, which I probably won't. All right. All right. All right, so Paul asks, he contributed $100, he gets first dibs on a question. Why would hospital CEOs defend Cuomo? Not putting COVID patients in nursing homes seems like a no-brainer. Daniel's given me the $49.99 in anticipation of the rant. God, I did so many good Trump rants over the last 5 years, maybe 6, that I think I earned the $49.99. But there will be more Trump rants. He's not going away, and therefore I won't go away. So thank you, Daniel. That is amazing. All right, we're starting to make February a decent month. This is good. This is good. Okay, why would hospital CEOs defend Cuomo? Because he has political power over them. And even if he loses in the next election, the next guy is going to have political power over them. Some hospitals are publicly owned, that is, they're owned by the government in a sense. But private hospitals are heavily regulated, and much of the regulation does not come from the federal government. It comes from the local state government. And they have to weigh the damage. But yes, putting COVID patients in nursing homes was one of the dumbest ideas ever. Both Cuomo and Newsom did it. I think they did it in Florida as well, right in the beginning, but stopped it pretty quickly. They did it in London. And it was a disaster. A lot of the deaths in March were caused by that. And Newsom is, of course, hiding the numbers and underreported and all of that. So awful. But it really, it's because of fear of political reprisals. It's because of the kind of power politicians have over people. That is what motivates these hospital CEOs. Not a belief, not a support of Cuomo, but just fear. Fear. Oh, God. What have you started, Daniel? How much for an anti-Trudeau rant? Huh. This is the problem with Trudeau, right? With the Trudeau rant. I don't know that much about it. See, you would not, like Daniel, just be funding, stimulating my subconscious into something that I know well and it's just easy for me to do. I would actually have to go research Trudeau. So I would say for a good Trudeau rant, I think we'd have to make it $100 because I would have to actually go and read up a little bit about Trudeau. And Paul says, yeah, so that would be the criteria. So a lot of this depends on how much work I have to do in prep in order to pull it up. That's right, the $1,000 for a topic of your choosing. That's why that is. All right. We got to get more likes, so don't forget to give it a thumbs up. There's 156. There have been more than that on 134 likes. There should be more likes than that. So don't forget to like the show before leaving. All the people disliking the show, don't do that. It's just not nice, people. It's just not nice. Why are you giving it a thumbs down? All right. Paul says they have no ethics. Yes, they have no ethics. They're pragmatists, like most businessmen are pragmatists. They are fearful. They know that the government has them by the balls. They know the government has huge impact on their ability to stay in business. Hospital CEOs, remember who becomes a hospital CEO? somebody well-versed in the, well-versed in politics. You don't rise up in a bureaucratic, government-influenced organization like that. If I once said that the more regulated an industry is, the less the CEO is likely to be a businessman, and the more likely it is that the CEO is a schmoozer, right? A small p politician. And nothing. And that's what, why you see them particularly cowardice among hospital leaders who are going to suck up to the politician, because they are that kind of person themselves. All right, one of the challenges of having a good, a really good, over $500 super chat evening is I have a lot of questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 questions. We're going to be here for a while, guys. We're going to be, go call your friends. Let's get the watch numbers up, because we're going to be here for a while just going over this, right? All right. Do you think most bad ideas are a form of self-preservation psychologically? Most, I don't know, but certainly for a lot of people they are. The bad ideas are a consequence of the Thank you, Daniel. All right, we're getting close to the Trudeau rant. Do you think most... so I think a lot of people afraid of reality, afraid of truth, afraid of facing reality. And bad ideas are a way for them to protect themselves from that. So in that sense, the self-preservation psychologically. They don't want to face the truth. So they need justification for their evasions. They need a justification for not living their life, so they might believe in an afterlife. Okay, I'll get to that in the next life. Or, well, I can't actually pursue my own happiness. I can't actually attain my own happiness because morally I'm supposed to take care of all those other people. So it is, for a lot of people, a way to psychologically justify their existence, their mediocre, or in some cases, pathetic existence. How many people identify as objectivists? And why does everything hate George Soros? Believe it or not, I'm Jewish, but I do not know who George Soros is. Oh, wow, I don't know how you don't know who George Soros is. He's been such a fixture of the culture for the last 30 years. All right, so how many people identify as objectivists? I don't know. If I had a guess, 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe more. I don't think they are necessarily objectivists, maybe more. Maybe it's in the hundreds of thousands who would identify with Ayn Rand and objectivism, not really knowing what it is fully, but having read a bunch of her books and really liked them. So that's in terms of the number. Why does everybody hate George Soros? Because people like conspiracy theories. George Soros is a leftist who funds many of the leftist groups and initiatives out there. He's also a financier, a very successful hedge fund guy. And very successful hedge fund guy. So add to the fact that he is Jewish, add to the fact that he is a leftist, add to the fact that he does indeed fund many leftist organizations, the fact that he's also a financier, he's obviously a bad guy. during the Holocaust, he was a teenager, and he did some things that are bad, which he's acknowledged. So that adds fuel to the fire, and people consider him a Jewish anti-Semitic, which I think. But the real reason is that people like conspiracy theories. People like simple explanations to the problems that they envision, and they see the left on the rise. And it can be because of their ideas, because their ideas are terrible. So it must be because somebody is manipulating the world in order to bring it about. And George Soros is that somebody who is blamed for everything. Everything. So, George Soros is a bad guy with a bad philosophy. He donates to many bad causes. He is a net negative in this world. But he's not the cause of our problems. And he's not the most evil person in the world. But he is a bad guy. But people want simple explanations, and a simple explanation is Soros funds it all, corrupts it all, manipulates it all. He's behind everything. So every bad idea, every bad organization, every bad event, every bad occurrence is supposedly funded by George Soros. He brought down the Bank of England once, and just for that, I used to have immense respect for him, because he went around the world disciplining governments by calling their lies about their currencies and forcing them to acknowledge that they were lying. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. And he did that throughout the 90s, and he made his fortune, many, many, many billions, his fortune. Right? Almost everybody funds BLM. Somebody says, why does he fund BLM? Yeah, almost everybody funds BLM. BLM is the case du jour of the left. So he funds BLM because he's a leftist. Because he's been convinced, like all the corporate sponsors of BLM, like all the Silicon Valley supporters of BLM, that they have them all high ground, that BLM has them all high ground, that BLM is indeed fighting against barbaric fascism and racism, and that's why he supports BLM. There's no big conspiracy theory here. It's just ideas. They're bad ideas, and therefore they act badly. Still longing for a show done on the beach in Puerto Rico. Me too. Internet connection might not be, I'd have to do by Wi-Fi, Maybe I'll do a show sometime from my balcony in my condo in Puerto Rico with the ocean as the background. That would be cool. Anyway, let's see. Can you do a show on why people who should get objectivism don't? I would do a show on that if I knew why they don't. I don't know why they don't. Not completely. Other than to say they're not completely honest with themselves. So it's an issue of honesty and integrity. I don't know why they don't. Teddy Roosevelt also yes, I already talked about that, about Teddy Roosevelt. Any thoughts on crypto and Bitcoin? If so, have they changed? Tesla is accepting Bitcoin. PayPal is adding crypto. Fund managers want in. Yeah, this is maybe time to call a high on Bitcoin. I think it's at a high. I would sell if I owned it, but then I would have sold way back. I don't know what Bitcoin's worth. I've said this many times. Bitcoin and crypto will be valuable technologies in the future in ways that we don't fully understand. It's going to change the way certain businesses are done. I doubt that it's going to land up being a currency. I doubt that it's going to remain in its current form. I doubt that Tesla accepting Bitcoin means anything. My guess is that once Tesla accepts Bitcoin, it sells it into dollars. Same with PayPal. I appreciate the fact that Bitcoin has value. I don't think anybody knows what the value is. monetarily? Is it worth 50,000 or 50? I don't know how to do that calculation. And I don't think anybody does. So right now it's supply and demand. And I think a lot of the supply is driven by hype. That is typically a bubble. Now, I'm not saying it's worth zero. I'm not saying it'll never have its uses. Certainly crypto and the blockchain are going to have many uses. But I don't know that we know what those uses exactly are going to be and how it's going to evolve exactly and what the value of the coin itself is going to be or is today. I don't, to me, it's like gambling or like pure speculation, and I would stay away from it. You quote Rand about collaborating with non-objectivists on single issues, but why does it seem AOI always finds a reason why any group is not good enough? Well, that's just not true. I don't know what you're talking about. We collaborated with the Tea Party. We often spoke at Tea Party events. We developed seminars for the Tea Party at the time. We have worked with particular groups on particular topics over the years. It's just hard to keep coalitions like that together when there's disagreement about fundamentals, and the coalitions just don't last. And interest fades, and people shift focuses, not at the Institute, but outside. So I don't know why you think AOI does not work with other groups. I mean, that to me is just nonsense. I mean, and it's, as somebody who ran AOI for years, you know, I try to collaborate with FEE, I try to collaborate with Cato, I try to collaborate with the state policy networks, I try to collaborate with local think tanks. We try to collaborate with a lot of different entities, but none of it, and of course the Tea Party, we collaborated with people on the Elian Gonzalez case. We collaborated with people, well, that one was, nobody collaborated with us. On specific issues, we've collaborated many, many times. It has to be an issue that interests us, and it has to be an issue that has a fundamental philosophical aspect to it. We've collaborated with Montpelier Society, with academics in various fields, I mean, you guys don't know a fraction of what the Institute has done, and yet AOI always finds a reason why any group is not good enough. Who are these groups that we found are not good enough? We collaborated with Dave Rubin. We tried. We tried to collaborate with lots of people. It just has never really, really clicked. We collaborated with Gloria Alvarez. Oh, we collaborated with the Heartland Institute. Now, it's absolutely true that the Heartland Institute used to be really good, and now I don't know that I collaborate with them. I don't think they collaborate with me because they turned into a Trump organization. We collaborated with FIRE. Right? I don't want to collaborate with Dennis Prager because I find anybody who claims that you can't have morality outside of religion and somebody who sues YouTube. I don't like Dennis Prager. I don't like him quite intensely. And his lawsuit on YouTube is a real problem. We collaborated with Glenn Beck. We try to influence Rush Limbaugh. We sent him a whole library of Ayn Rand's books. You know, if you actually knew what we did, then fine. I'm eager to know what the criticism is, right? But I'm curious, who is it that is not good enough? Now, I find it more difficult to collaborate with objectivists who don't live up to being objectivists. It's much easier for me to collaborate with people who are not objectivists, but who share some common ground and our collaboration is limited, than with objectivists who I think are, in one way or another, either in personally or ideologically betraying the cause. And that's an important distinction because I think it's important to fight for the purity of objectivism. Oh, not only do we collaborate with these centers in the UK and Europe and Latin America and groups in Asia, we did that. We founded these groups. We helped create them. AOI does not own the copyright to Ayn Rand's works. The copyright is owned by Leonard Peikoff and by the publisher, Penguin. I mean, if somebody joins the Atlas Society, the pseudo-objectivist society, then you should judge them based just on that. Right? Oh, and of course we collaborated with the graduate program at the Severo Institute in Prague, where we've been offering a degree with classes on objectivism in PP&E, which is philosophy, politics, and economics. And that's in Prague, and it's run by a libertarian. And we've been collaborating. I mean, we collaborate all over the world with institutions, with groups, with think tanks. I mean, Adam Smith Institute, of course, how did I forget that? In London, we collaborated on multiple things, the Institute for Economic Affairs, but really, mostly the Adam Smith Institute in London. God, I mean, there's no end to the number of organizations we've collaborated with. And then there are a few, primarily in the anarchist world, that we don't collaborate with. And then there are a few in the objectivist world that we don't collaborate with. So what? But compare that to the overwhelming number of groups that we've collaborated with. It's just no contest. It's just no contest. So I don't know where these ideas come from. I find it sad that people have this really, really, really false view of the Ayn Rand Institute and what we've done and what we're doing and what we have done over the last 20 years. It's just over the last 30 years. I just find it sad. Well, I did not try to collaborate with Trump, but one of my board members was offered a job by Trump. Turned him down. Never would work for that guy. So there you go. Why do politicians say the American people want, demand, etc.? Sounds all-inclusive to me. I don't want any of it, and I'm an American. Do people associate being good? Oh, that's a separate question. I think because they want to wrap themselves, like Josh Hawley, in the banner of democracy. They want to be for the people. They want to be the people's voice. They want to be representative of the people. And they're collectivists. Collectivists. It's the collective speaking, the collective will, the collective wisdom, the collective whatever. And Josh Hawley is 100% a collectivist. A new nationalism. Nationalism is a collectivist ideology. Josh Hawley is the ultimate collectivist. Believes in central planning and knowing what the public will is, channeling the public will through him. He's the philosopher king. He went to Yale after all. He's smart. Not like the rest of us who went to state universities. Do people associate being good with boredom? Yes, 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 absolutely. They associate being good with boredom. And our movies make that clear. They not only associate good with boredom, they associate good with suffering, good with sacrifice, good with, boredom is great. Good with failure, good with lack of sex. Yeah, good is impractical. That's what altruism teaches us. That's what the moral teachings in the world out there teach us. There's watch movies. I don't know, do you ever see Face Off? Do you ever see Face Off? It's a really interesting movie, and it's really well acted. I enjoyed for the acting with, I forget the name, John Travolta and somebody will remind me in a minute. Anyway, the good guy is a boring family guy who's miserable and unhappy and really not that successful at his job. Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage, John Travolta. Brilliant acting by both of them, right? The good guy is boring. He's in love, but it's a boring kind of life. Just not that interesting. The bad guy, on the other hand, women draped all over him. He has money. He's rich. He has fun. He smiles. He's enjoying life. He's enjoying life. Now, there are many movies like that. Another brilliant movie, well, even a better movie than that, is called Heat, with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And again, the cop is miserable, divorced, sad, unsuccessful, doesn't know what he did with his life. What's the point? Has no money, big mortgage, no money, boring. The bad guy got women, got money, got everything going for him. Happy, successful, brilliant. And you see it in all the movies. You see it everywhere in the culture. The good is boring. Great observation and absolutely right. Now, objectivism, of course, views that completely the other way around. Completely the other way around. Okay, where can I find information to help train staying in focus? Train staying in focus. Train staying in focus. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. You might want to ask Greg Salmieri or Gina Gorlin, but I don't know. I would say one way to train yourself to stay in focus is to listen to classical music and over time work on expanding your ability to your attention span, which is part of what staying in focus requires. It requires you to be able to keep your attention on something, keeping it in focus for a long time.
That's what I found.
What's the difference between being emotional, passionate, and being an emotionalist? Being an emotionalist is letting yourself be guided by emotions, acting on those emotions, judging people based on those emotions. Being passionate or emotional is experiencing those emotions, recognizing those emotions, using those emotions maybe as motivation, but not to make a decision. The decision needs to be made by reason. So feeling them, acknowledging them, understanding them, appreciating them, relishing them, just not using them to make decisions. I agree objectivism is primarily about living one's own life, then why is the majority of AOI's content focused on politics rather than how to live well? I don't think the majority of the content is focused on politics, but if it is, then I think it's because that's how you gain attention in the culture where politics is so dominant. You bring people in with it. Do I wish we had somebody who could do self-help? Yes. But I think that requires expertise. That requires a particular form of knowledge, which we don't have an expert on, right? It requires certain knowledge of psychology with integration with philosophy and an ability to turn objectivism to something that is self-help oriented. Now, I'll also say that many of our donors want us to focus on politics because that's what consumes them. But I don't consider the focus at the Ayn Rand Institute on politics. I think the focus on the Ayn Rand Institute is on understanding the philosophy and applying it. And it's true that we have not done a lot on applying it in the dimension of what's called self-help in psychology. But that's primarily because we don't and haven't had that kind of expertise among us to do it. And I'm hoping that we will have that in the future. Any quick thoughts about admiration as a virtue? I think it's a virtue. It's part of justice. That is, admiration is justice. It's you admire people who deserve to be admired. And it's a recognition of their greatness. It's a recognition of their importance to your life. It's a recognition of their achievement. So it is it's not a major virtue like justice. It's under justice. It's justice and integrity maybe, but under justice. Admiration is that which one, the respect that one gives to someone who has achieved greatness. And again, it's a sub-virtue under the virtue of justice. Remember, each one of the virtues has many what you'd call minor virtues or sub-virtues underneath them. As an occasional target of envy yourself, do you view attacks from envy as petty or more dangerous? It seems people are getting more deranged about it, trying to tag admired people as racist. I think they're very dangerous. I think they're very dangerous. It's a question of how you deal with them. Sometimes they're petty. A lot of the stuff on the chat is petty. There's a guy on the chat today that's unbelievably petty, and it's silly and stupid, and I don't think it's dangerous. But there certainly are attacks that are dangerous, and some of the attacks on me right now are quite dangerous, from other quarters. It is what it is. You have to deal with them. There's no way to be in the public world without being attacked. But it's not something that should be belittled. It's not something that should be not thought about, considered, and recognized as a danger, as a threat that needs to be dealt with. And then the only question is, how do you deal with it? Mostly, I deal with it with silence, but for now at least. What do you think of arguments of Sabo and Amos and Austrian Bitcoiners that gold's monetary value is as a physical ledger in double-entry banking system? Gold's monetary is a physical ledger, double-entry banking system. I guess I'd have to, let me look into their argument because I don't get it. So let me look into it, right? Once I look into it, I'll give you an answer. What do you think the government is hiding? I mean, a lot of stuff. Much of its motivation it's hiding. But no, I don't think the government is some ominous thing that is hiding some bigger agenda. I think what it's hiding primarily is all the garbage that it's done, all the nonsense that it's done, all the ugliness that it's done, all the devastation it's created. I think it hides that constantly. And what it hides is its own incompetence, big time. It's hiding incompetence. And then it's hiding its motivation, which is power over us. That it's hiding constantly. That gold's use gave rise to its use as money, but now its monetary use constitutes the majority of its demand. And now its primarily monetary value is its scarcity follow up to previous. Yes, I think that's to a large extent true, but that's its primary monetary value. But underpinning its monetary value is the fact that it is of use, right? So its monetary value is not just because people decided it had monetary value. People decided it had monetary value because A, it was something people desired for use, primarily jewelry, I would say. And secondly, because of its scarcity, because of the mining and all of that, but it's for our purposes, it's close to infinite supply. But yes, it has a physical manifestation that is of use, even if that use is not a primary, that use can be fallen back on. I'd also say this, that part of its value is the fact that if tomorrow all electricity on planet Earth was shut down, imagine there was one of these nuclear explosions that shut down the grid. And electricity globally would be shut down. Imagine that happening. Bitcoin is gone. Yet, the people who survive that, not many, would still value gold. We trade in gold. you can tell me all you want about the Bitcoin in your computer somewhere, on some server somewhere. It's gone. It's disappeared. Gold can't disappear. There's nothing the government can literally do other than come into our homes and steal all our gold, house by house, digging up every one of our backyards to get it. And even then, it wouldn't be all gone. Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. To get rid of all the gold in the world, it just couldn't happen. So that's a big reason why gold has value, why gold has value for emergencies. For when times get really, really bad. That's part of what gives it value, is the fact that it has value when there's no electricity. And Bitcoin doesn't. All right. Is there any animosity in Puerto Rico between the haves and have-nots? Some. Not so much between the some, yeah. I mean, the unions in Puerto Rico are quite prominent. And there's a little bit of animosity between the Puerto Ricans and those of us who've moved to Puerto Rico because we're getting significant tax breaks in order to do it. So they resent that because they're not getting the tax breaks. But generally, I have found Puerto Ricans to be incredibly generous and friendly and polite and just great. So I have not experienced that animosity. It's out there somewhere, but I have not experienced it. I've not witnessed it. I've not seen it. I just hear about it. If you thought climate change is a crisis, what is the best way for the current government to attack it? Carbon tax? No, I don't think it's a problem government should solve. If it is a real problem, then the government should use the bully pulpit to encourage people, first of all, to explain the crisis to people, to identify the crisis, explain it, articulate what it is, and encourage. Let's assume universities are out of this, that government funding is not acceptable. Let's assume a laissez-faire government, a complete laissez-faire government. Then it would be to encourage research labs, philanthropists like Bill Gates to invest in the only solution possible for climate change, which is technology and innovation. Innovation that sucks carbon out of the air, innovation that produces cheap nuclear power. I mean, the best thing that the federal government could do, that the government could do to promote with regard to climate change right now, if they think it's a crisis, is deregulate nuclear. Encourage nuclear, not by subsidizing. So it really is mostly an issue of getting out of the way and using the bully pulpit to educate Americans. Markets will deal with it. People's selfish motivation not to die and not to have their kids die and not to have their property flooded will take care of it. Insurance companies who will not insure people's homes on floodplains will take care of it. Or insurance companies would have an incentive to, they'd raise insurance rates dramatically in Florida, which would then encourage people to find solutions like building dikes or other things so that they can sell property in Florida because Florida is going to be underwater if climate change, whatever the fear-mongering happens to be. There are market solutions for it if the knowledge is believable. So you have to make the knowledge believable. Are you concerned about the slippery slope of tyranny from COVID lockdowns? Absolutely. Government never gives back its powers after a crisis. So it's not that it keeps them all, is it doesn't give, it keeps some of them. And so lockdowns are gone, but now we know. Lockdowns might be gone. But now we know that whenever the government thinks there's an emergency, it can lock us down. Other things, other processes, other, buying all the vaccines and being the sole distributor of vaccines and deciding who should get them and who shouldn't get them, instead of a market making those decisions. Right? But in some of the institutions, some of the power granted those institutions, that won't go away. And with the next crisis, it'll double up. Thoughts on gold back? High premium and trading in gold seems to be a bit difficult. High premiums and trading in gold. I'm not sure why it's difficult. I thought gold, it's pretty easy to trade in gold. I'm missing something, Ian. Sorry. I'm not sure what it is exactly. Maybe you can write me an email explaining what you mean, and I'll look into it. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's been over 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the super chatters. We made it to $626, which is the best day by far in February, so that's great. You didn't let February pass without a really good super chat day. Don't forget tomorrow we've got another show with questions, primarily questions from Zoom, but also questions from the super chat. So don't forget to bring some coinage, some gold to the show tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern time. It will be a open Q&A. Thanks to all the super chatters. Thanks to all of you who support the show on a monthly basis. Thanks to all of you who like the show, and those who haven't yet, please do so before you leave. Thank you to all of those who are going to share the show. And of course, if you're not a subscriber yet, please become a subscriber. Click the bell so that you get notified about when I go live in the future. And Daniel, you will get a rant. I didn't say today. You will get a rant on Trump, right? It will happen. It will come. Maybe after his speech at CPAC tomorrow. We'll see. Bye, everybody. I will see you tomorrow.